Greetings fellow gorehounds and welcome back to another Blood Splattered vlog. But before we get to the movie I'm going to be reviewing today, I want to first mention that the good people over at No Evil sent me a shirt that they wanted me to wear and promote on my show, and I said, what the hell, why not? They make good shirts. So what do you say we open this baby up and see what they sent me? I'm kind of excited to find out what it is. Alright, let's open sesame. Oh, interesting. No Evil. Live, die, live. Aha. See? It says it right there. Live, die, live. Alright, this is an interesting package. Let's see, how this goes. Let us see how awesome this shirt is. Oh, that's cool. It's a Texas Butcher Shop t-shirt in the style of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's pretty freaking awesome. Let us do a jump cut and put it on. As you can see, it fits real nice, and you can see it right here in the frame. I kind of have to step back so you can get a good look at it because I only have so much economy of frame here, but whatever. So yeah, I'm going to be wearing this for the rest of this review, and if you would like to get your very own Texas Butcher Shop t-shirt from No Evil, then click the link in the description below and have yourself a good time. And now that we got that out of the way, the movie we're going to talk about today is a little movie called Little Evil, a Netflix original horror comedy that I didn't even know existed until last week when it hit Netflix and a whole bunch of people were like, hey, have you watched it yet? And I knew next to nothing about this movie outside of the fact that I knew that it was a parody essentially of little kid horror movies like The Bad Seed or The Omen or even like Village of the Damned or Children of the Corn or anything like that. This movie is essentially a parody of all those things. But outside of knowing that basic premise, I had no idea who the leads were. I had no idea who made the movie. I didn't even know what the exact plotting of the movie was. So I went into this movie relatively blind, and I gotta say, I had a really fucking good time. This movie is not only extremely funny, it's also very effective as a horror movie. It has more in common with horror comedies like Shaun of the Dead, where it actually treats its source material with a whole bunch of respect and doesn't just shit all over it like the scary movie movies do. So as a result, the horror scenes are actually tension-filled. They aren't just funny, they're also kind of tense to watch. And they don't skimp out on it either. They actually go full bore with the horror cinematography and like the scary moments and like just the intense like creep factor is put on high in this movie. Especially anything involving the little kid in this movie. This little kid is actually the perfect creepy kid in a horror movie. He does a damn good job, even though he's also funny half the time. But even more than that, all the comedy in the movie is derived from the situations rather than making fun of these types of movies themselves. So instead of going like, oh, how do we make fun of this classic scene in a horror movie? It's instead going, how do we make this classic scene in a horror movie kind of funny by doing a little twist on it? In fact, the movie it reminded me a lot of while we're watching the movie was a little movie called Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, which did this great twist on the Hillbilly Killer movie. And lo and behold, after we saw this movie, it turns out it was made by the same team that made Tucker and Dale, so there you go. So yeah, I'm not sure what more to say about this movie before we get to the spoilers. It's extremely funny, it's got a ton of fantastic comedians and character actors that fill this cast with some of the most lovable side characters I've seen in a horror movie in a long time. Like seriously, this is one of the few horror movies where you're sitting there and half the cast you're like, I do not want him to die, I do not want her to die, I do not want them to die, I want them all to live because I love them all. And that's a rare feat in a horror movie, especially a horror comedy. I mean, look at movies like Zombievers, I love that movie, but you want everyone to die from the get-go in that one. And another movie it actually reminded me a lot of, it reminded me of Cooties, so if you like movies like Cooties, then I definitely recommend this movie as well. And with that said, let us move on to the spoilers. So this movie opens up right away with an Amityville horror reference as our main character moves into his new house with his new wife and his new stepson. And we also meet these two awesome movers who are sitting in the car with him as he pulls up to the new house, and the characters don't really go anywhere outside of this opening scene, but you're really endeared to them right away, which just kind of goes to show what I mean about this movie having a ton of really awesome side characters that you grow to love. Anyway, it turns out our main character didn't get a lot of time to actually bond with his new stepson before he got married to the stepson's mother. So, the crux of the beginning of this movie is essentially him trying to connect with his stepson, but the stepson being this creepy motherfucker that wants nothing to do with him. Like seriously, this kid's like straight out of The Omen. He just sits on swings and does these crazy death stares every time the stepfather looks over at him. But in the beginning of this movie, the stepfather seems a little oblivious to the stepson's overall weirdness. He just kind of chalks it up to a kid being a kid. You know, like the kid's moving into a new house with a new father and a new everything, so clearly the kid's kind of disconnecting from everything. But no, he gets a wake-up call as the movie goes on because things start to get extremely fucked up and weird. A good example being, at one point, the main character is called from work to the school because the kid's in trouble. And as for what the kid did, all apparently the kid did was he told one of his teachers to go to hell, and she responded to that by pouring lye all over her face, jumping out a window, and impaling herself on a metal fence. But this movie leaves that scene kind of off screen, and I kind of like that it did because it allowed it to focus more on this other scene that's kind of unique to this kind of movie. And that is when the stepfather goes in to talk with the school counselor, and the school counselor blames him for the kid telling the teacher to go to hell and forcing the teacher to kill herself. Which is wholly absurd, but it kind of shows where the crux of the comedy of this movie is. Basically, you have the kid do something extremely creepy and extremely supernatural, and everyone in the movie just chalks it up to kid being a kid, but the main character slowly coming to the realization that no, he's the fucking Antichrist. Which is a really good horror scenario. It's essentially the classic Hitchcock situation of being a character in which something weird happens to you, but no one believes you. But it also works as a really good comedy scenario, because the more contrast you put between the hyper-normalness of the way the characters are treating the situation and the absurdness of what's actually going on, the funnier it gets. And believe me, this movie is hilarious. And a whole lot of things happen as a result of this school scene. For example, the main character ends up getting put into this counseling group for stepfathers. And at this group, he meets a cast of characters that is essentially a whole bunch of character actors and comedians all playing these various stepfathers. And you think that they're all gonna be some sort of like awkward stereotype, but actually each one is a character in and of themselves, and you actually grow to love all of them. And in particular, my favorite character is this character Al, who was not only part of this counseling group, but is also his co-worker from work. And this character is great. It's a female actress, but you're never quite sure if it's supposed to be like a big butch lesbian or a trans woman. But either way, she plays this like hyper masculine badass chick who just loves monster trucks and America, and it's really funny. But not funny in the haha let's laugh at her way, but funny in the holy shit that's goddamn awesome way. And let me let you in on a little secret, her whole love of monster trucks comes back at the end of the movie in a glorious way. Which is another thing I really love about this movie. Everything set up in the beginning of the movie actually serves a purpose. There's no throwaway joke or throwaway character, they all come back in some way. With the exception of maybe the two movers at the beginning of the movie, but you love them so much you don't care. So anyway, while this is all going on, our main character, it turns out, is a real estate broker, and he's actually selling this giant abandoned nunnery to Clancy Brown, of all people, who in this movie is playing a character called the Reverend Gospel, who is essentially one of those doom and gloom televangelist types. You know, those people that show up on talk shows always to say, like, the end is nigh, we must prepare for Armageddon. Except it's Clancy Brown, so he says it all cool and badass-like. So anyway, you have this subplot of him selling this nunnery to Clancy Brown, who you get the impression is going to come back later in the movie in one way or another. I mean, obviously, if the kid's the Antichrist, the priest is going to have an important role at some point in the movie. So anyway, after this, tensions start to rise between the main character and the stepson, which in turn leads to tensions rising between the main character and his wife, which a good example of this being a birthday party scene in which the main character hires this clown, which the kid then sets on fire and nearly kills. And of course, because of this, everyone blames the main character for hiring this clown that set himself on fire, but he really didn't set himself on fire, the kid compelled him to. But who the fuck is gonna believe the main character that the kid did that? So the main character goes to pick up the wedding video for the wedding that took place before the movie even began, and when he gets there, he meets up with the videographer, who is played by Dale from Tucker and Dale. But it turns out this guy's a little worried about things that happened during the wedding. For example, the priest at the wedding spoke in tongues, which everyone at the wedding assumed was just Latin, but it wasn't Latin, it was actually something in reverse. And when the videographer plays it in reverse, it turns out what he's saying is he's essentially compelling the stepfather to take care of the son. Through fire and brimstone, I believe. Which is a little weird and super fucking creepy, but that's not the end of what happens at this wedding. Because it turns out what also happens at this wedding is the kid summons a goddamn tornado that nearly rips up the entirety of the fucking reception. And he's just standing there in the video in the middle of the fucking tornado with no wind hitting his hair, looking like something straight out of The Omen, just like creepy facing it. Arg, I'm creepy. And so the videographer's like, clearly, this kid is the son of the devil and you need to kill him, and I'm gonna go send you off to find this demon hunter. And apparently this demon hunter's name is Gazamel, and he is known throughout the fucking world as being this guy who hunts demons. So the main character and his best friend go out to meet Gazamel, who turns out to be a little person. Now this is a character that I loved in the movie, but I feel like they could have done a little more with him, because the character is introduced almost as fast as he's killed off. But he does have this great scene where he talks about how his father bestowed this destiny on him, where he's supposed to go out on the 6th day of the 6th month at 6 o'clock and essentially kill the Antichrist. And what I liked about this whole scene is that it definitely continued the whole father-son theme of the movie. But anyway, when the main character finds out he's gonna have to kill his son, he's like, fuck no, we're not gonna do this. But unfortunately, before he could assert himself on this, they end up crashing the van, and Gazamel ends up getting impaled dead as a result of this crash. And at this point, his best friend freaks out and is like, I gotta get out of here, I got work tomorrow, I'm out. And the main character goes back home, and at this point, he's just been through a car crash, so like he's all like covered in dirt and corn because they were in a cornfield, which I'm assuming was supposed to be a nod to Children of the Corn, but that could have just been a coincidence, who knows. And he gets home to find Child Protective Services waiting for him there because essentially the parents from the birthday party called them on him, because why the fuck did the main character put all the kids in danger by hiring a clown that was going to set himself on fire? But anyway, point is, Child Protective Services are now on his ass, and he gets put into this awkward scenario where he has to go tuck the stepson into bed. But at this point, he's well aware that he's the Antichrist, so he goes up to the bedroom and all the lights go out, and he has to walk in the hallway in like a horror scenario with a flashlight. And there's a great nod to Child's Play in this movie where one of the toys starts yelling at him like, hey, wanna play? And he takes out the batteries, but then the kid freaks him out. So he runs into the bathroom where he ends up tripping and hitting his head on the bathroom tub. And then the kid drags him outside and buries him alive in the pouring rain. While this is all happening, Child Protective Services leaves, and then he, from inside the coffin, calls his wife. So she runs outside, grabs a shovel, digs up her husband, and grounds her son, but then proceeds to yell at her husband for not being a good enough father, because clearly if he was a better father and treated his son better, then he wouldn't have buried him. Which once again is another absurd scenario where they're treating this as just a kid acting out when he nearly killed him. But like I said, it's like Tucker and Dale versus Evil. The more absurd you make the scenario and the more mundane you make people's reactions, the funnier it gets. But this is the point in the movie where we start to reach the third act and everything shifts in a way that you're not expecting in the slightest. Because the main character decides that he's going to kill the son, and so he takes the son to this water park that apparently was christened by the Pope. So it's sacred ground, so he's essentially going to drown the kid in one of the water slide pools. But while spending the day with the kid at the water park, they start bonding and they actually grow to love one another. The kid ends up apologizing for trying to kill him, and he apologizes for trying to kill the kid, and oh hey, like, look, the Antichrist can actually be good. Which creates this great metaphor for parenting within the movie, essentially saying that even if your kid is the Antichrist, you can still reach out to him with love and raise him to be a good kid. One of those nature versus nurture things. The kid's nature might be to be a vessel for the devil, but you can nurture him into being not that. And that's what the main character learns over the course of this movie, that hey, no, I don't need to kill my kid, I just need to actually be a father. So, in a weird, absurd, twisted way, the wife was kinda right? Which is super bizarre to say, but it actually works in the movie. So anyway, at this point, everything shifts because now it is the father's duty to protect his son when Child Protective Services pulls up and takes the kid, and it turns out they're part of a creepy cult that wants to bring on the apocalypse, and their leader is none other than Clancy Brown. Clancy Brown kidnaps his wife, they take the wife and the son to the nunnery, and then the main character is basically left to turn to his stepfather friends, who all pack up and get into Al's monster truck and go heading to the nunnery to kick some ass. Now, as for whether or not he saves his son, as for whether or not this whole thing ends happily, I'm gonna leave that for all of you to find out for yourselves. And I highly recommend it. I love this movie, I love the message it has, I love the characters, I love the way it's written, I love that everything in the beginning of the movie comes back at the end. And I love that there's no fat in this movie. There's no point in this movie where I felt like, oh, we didn't really need that scene. There's a great economy of storytelling here, and I appreciate that. Anyway, my fellow gorehounds, you can find this movie on Netflix. I will also provide some sort of Amazon affiliate link in the description below. And as per usual, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so that you're notified of my videos immediately upon their upload. And as I always say, my friends, peace out, and I'll catch y'all later.